nowadays we get approached by brands that, are just newly launched and wanting to dig their heels into influencer marketing. But I always tell them that to be patient and to really build that foundational base of brand marketing first. And influence marketing really acts as the cherry on top to accelerate the growth. But if you don't have that foundational base in place, you're just going to have missed opportunities of all these new customers coming to your Instagram or website and not being able to properly convert them or keep them around. So,
hey, and welcome to Female Founder World. I'm your host, Jasmine, and today I'm interviewing Julianne Fraser, who is an absolute expert in all things influencer marketing. She's worked with some of the biggest D2C brands in the world and really gives you a lot of insight into how to grow your company through influencer marketing. Let's kick it off. Well, Julianne, welcome to the show and thanks so much for joining me. The first question that I love to ask everyone who comes on is just to tell us a little bit about, for people who don't know, what is it that you do? You're a little bit of a different kind of talent to have on the show. Normally we have founders who kind of have physical products, but you bring a lot of expertise in a very specific area that people do ask a lot about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I basically kind of fell into the world of social media marketing almost a decade ago, right around the time that Instagram launched. And I first started off in New York City working for Ian Schrager Hotels and really was building social media and digital strategies from the ground up. And it was at that time I started to really organically meet with a few of the OG influencers that weren't called influencers back then, and just really naturally kind of form these partnerships and campaigns that made sense at the time. And so throughout my career, from there, I moved on to Lacoste and I managed digital communication in North America. And I joined a startup accelerator and worked with a lot of Series A and Series B startups that, were just kind of getting off the ground and helped them accelerate and grow. And all of that sort of led me to launch my company, Dialogue New York, 4 years ago, which really, because my time in the industry, I saw what I lovingly refer to as the wild, wild west of influencer marketing. And I experienced so many different approaches to it, from, PR firms that really understand the creativity and the relationship components, performance marketing agencies that really understand the importance of trackability and measuring returns, and then a lot of platforms that evolved over time to try and automate the process. And so having, experienced and done all of the different approaches, I felt like there was an opportunity to build a hybrid model that really rooted our work in digital strategy. So over the last 4 years, we've worked with a really wide variety of brands, from Sakara Life to Seed Probiotics and Brooklinen, Baboon to the Moon, Grailed in the fashion space, Our Place in the cooking space. So a really wide variety. But ultimately, our approach really just comes down to that initial strategy and in figuring out how we can authentically build these relationships long-term and build a community and a halo effect around the brand to really resonate.
Okay, I have so many things I want to get into with you. I can really understand what you're saying about it being like the wild, wild west of influencer marketing back in the day. My background is I was a digital editor for years. And I remember, especially in Australia, there was really only 2 digital publications when I first started. And no one wanted to work in digital. It was kind of those kids in digital, what are they doing? And so we kind of got lumped in with these new bloggers that were coming up, even though it was a bigger publication, and people just didn't know what to do with us. They didn't know how to think about it. And how do you think that the space has changed? It's probably an obvious question, but I think for people who maybe are younger or weren't involved in the space, I think it's difficult for them to understand really what influencer marketing used to look like versus what it is now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I can completely relate to that. My first role was a social media coordinator, entry-level marketing job. I think I felt like the intern in the broom closet. Nobody was paying attention. Nobody really cared about social media. That rapidly changed very, very quickly in a matter of years as people started to pay attention. But it was really, we had the good fortune to test and try and just experiment with social media, with influencer marketing. There wasn't a lot of pressure. There wasn't precedent. And also there weren't a lot of executives or older generations of team members that were more knowledgeable. So we had the opportunity to really kind of be the experts in the space at a young age. So I'm very grateful to have really randomly fallen into that so long ago. And, it's immensely changed. And I've been thinking a lot about it recently. Something that is kind of stuck out to me, especially this year, is that it feels like the industry as a whole, or the term influencer, almost has this negative connotation around it now. It's become this like dirty word. And it's on all sides of the spectrums, from creatives, defining themselves as content creators or key opinion leaders or tastemakers, of brands naming their programs, ambassadorships or communities, and even agencies, me being the first. We really, define ourselves as digital strategists. So it's interesting to see. And I think back on like how we got to this place where there is that negative connotation, because at the end of the day, influencer marketing has existed since the start of time. It's a matter of word of mouth advertising. If it wasn't a digital influencer, it was a celebrity back, a decade ago. So this has always existed. This has always been around, and it always will. It's not a bubble. It's a really important form of marketing. But I think throughout the time, the changes I've really experienced have been, there's been emergence of agents that have entered the space that are representing influencers. And there's a far greater spike in budget now and far greater profit to be made in the influencer space. And a lot of brands that are trying to scramble to catch up and get involved, knowing that this is a key aspect of their marketing. So combining all that, it's kind of created certain elements. It's not across the board. I think that there's a lot of brands and creatives that are super authentic and, stick to their values and build really meaningful and powerful partnerships. But there definitely is a risk with the industry for it to feel transactional, inauthentic. So I think that's sort of what I've seen shift in the last few years, especially with, the changes in the iOS changes or shifts in the Instagram algorithm. There's been a big kind of wave towards a little bit more of a performance marketing approach to influence marketing.
This is just an aside, but I have a theory that the reason why influencer marketing has this kind of bad taste in your mouth kind of reputation is that I think it's heavily gendered. I think that if influencers weren't mostly women or didn't start out being women, we'd think about it very differently. Anyway, that's just yeah, I think it's very gendered. Okay. So, you touched on a lot of things there. And what I'd be interested to know is what is working now in terms of influencer marketing. Like, it's not the same space that it used to be, where you could just reach out to people with 100,000 followers, send them a gift and cross your fingers and they would post, unless you have a pre-existing relationship. It's a much more organized process. There are professionals that can guide you in the space. There's many more layers to it now, I think, than they used to be. But what actually pushes the needle in 2021 in terms of influencer marketing?
Yeah, I think what it really comes down to is approaching influencer marketing as you would any other brand marketing tactic. And what I mean by that is that there really has to be a strategy and purpose and message. What we do with all of our new clients is a really deep dive into their brand storytelling. And we identify influencer marketing, when done right, should support all aspects of your marketing mix. It should enhance your ad spend and your performance program. It should really help your creative team to develop amazing assets to be leveraged. It should create a brand halo effect, social growth, website traffic. There should be all of these different factors that are supported by influencer marketing. So I think it's really important to have that deep dive, understand the brand's greater marketing strategy, but also its ethos, what it stands for. Because as with anything else, when pitching out one of our clients to the influencer community, it's a very saturated and competitive space. There's so many brands involved in influencer marketing. So there has to be that X factor and depth behind the brand. And I think nowadays we get approached by brands that, are just newly launched and wanting to dig their heels into influencer marketing. But I always tell them that to be patient and to really build that foundational base of brand marketing first. And influence marketing really acts as the cherry on top to accelerate the growth. But if you don't have that foundational base in place, you're just going to have missed opportunities of all these new customers coming to your Instagram or website and not being able to properly convert them or keep them around. So
And what are some of the activities that help to build that foundation in terms of making sure that you have a more resonant brand?
yeah, I kind of call it a secret sauce. And again, it's not necessarily a matter of timing. I've worked with a lot of brands that have been able to put this together very quickly, others that have taken years. But ultimately, it is some established social credibility. So their social channels are inspiring and active and well taken care of and have a certain amount of reach and credibility to them. Some press so that we can really point to credibility and features in press, a handful of interesting tastemakers or celebrities or influencers that organically love the brand from the get-go, are friends of the brand. And with those sort of carrots, we're able to go out and really position these brands as appealing and as something that the influencer community want to be the first to try. Without that in place, exactly like you mentioned, it really can feel like a request or a favor for, social promotion. So you really want to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row before you go out to the influencer community.
I want to talk about budget. And a lot of people listening to the podcast will be thinking about starting something, or they've recently just started a business and they're probably in the stage where they're trying to be scrappy. How much budget should people be thinking about for influencer programs?
So I actually work with a really wide variety of clients, from very early stage startups to established corporations like Shiseido, for example. And I'm a big believer that a lot of this, and I tell a lot of early stage startup founders that a lot can be done in-house and a lot can be done really scrappy with internal resources. And I think before allocating a really significant amount in paid influencer marketing, you have to build that community and sort of authentic group around the brand first. So oftentimes, if the founder or an individual on the team has the bandwidth to outreach personally, it goes a long way to hear directly from the brand's founder, leveraging your existing relationships, your partners, your friends, to kind of start the ball rolling down the hill. And I think there's a lot that can be done quite organically in a non-paid capacity. Like I said, if there is an X factor behind the brand that will really inspire someone. And it's the same in pitching out your brand to a publicist, or to an editor rather. You have to have that why behind your brand and something that makes you different and unique. And with that in place, I do believe that a lot of startup founders can manage this organically to start. And where we come in and can really support is taking that to the next level and really, adding scale to it. But I think a lot of brands can do quite a bit themselves.
Could you give us a bit of an insight into what the process is of setting up an influencer marketing campaign, maybe some of the tools you use to track like a CRM or something like that, for people who are trying to kind of, be scrappy and do some things themselves rather than outsourcing right now?
Definitely. So in our strategies, we really start off with understanding objectives. And that sounds like the ABCs of marketing, but truly, like I said, influencer marketing can serve so many different purposes that if we're not clear on whether we're looking to build brand awareness, really build social growth, build revenue conversions, all of those aspects, that will really dictate how we approach our campaigns. So really understanding that aspect. And then we stop to define influencer. And this sounds, pretty straightforward, but actually there are so many different types of influencers in the industry now that I think it's really important to identify. So we consider there's 3 different types. Someone who is a digital content creator, their full-time career and job is to manage their social channels. And a second type being a tastemaker. It's someone who might be an entrepreneur or an athlete or an activist, and they've amassed a social following as a result of their passion. And then the third bucket being an expert. So we've seen tons of doctors and nurses and nutritionists and stylists in the fashion space, whatever industry, there's experts. When you think about how you would approach those 3 different types of influencers, it's vastly different. And it's really important to identify that type up front so that you can cater your programs and your approach to be appealing to those individuals. And then we think about the different categories. So for example, with your brand, a beauty brand, you don't necessarily have to stay just within the beauty space. There's a lot of influencers within lifestyle, health, wellness, travel. So you define those categories. And then, of course, like tiers, defining exactly what micro, mid-tier, and macro looks like for your particular brand, because it's different for every brand. And with that understanding and clear way of defining influencers, then you can start to kind of map out what your curation will look like and find the right partners. If you skip that step and you just kind of reach out to 100 random people, and if you reach out to them in the same capacity, you're not going to have the same amount of interest as you would if you were thoughtful in your approach. And also, it can do more damage than good to work with an influencer that isn't aligned with your brand values or whatnot. So that upfront strategy is super crucial. And then, we really like to think through creative campaigns that are going to break through the social noise. So like I said, there's so many brands involved in influencer marketing. It is so incredibly saturated and more and more competitive by the day. How are we going to break through the social noise and actually inspire the influencer community to participate and also catch the attention of the consumers? So that's where we will dive into thoughtful partnerships with other brands, really meaningful viral campaigns, interesting storylines or calls to action or experiences we can offer the influencer community. And with those interesting, creative campaigns, then we start our outreach. So I think it's really important for any entrepreneur wanting to tap into influencer marketing early on to just be thoughtful of that upfront foundation before diving in.
How are you thinking about video at the moment versus like still imagery in terms of what influencers are sharing? Is video content driving more impact?
Yeah, I think without a doubt, it definitely is. It's a combination of consumer behavior changing and individuals being more interested in video content. It's a little bit more real, a little bit more relatable, but also, the Instagram algorithm really supporting new features like Reels and IGTV. It's inevitable that those are, really the products that are gaining momentum. And I think they're, especially throughout the past year with COVID and all that we've endured, I think there is a real desire for more relatable and real content and getting away from the perfect editorialized imagery that, Instagram was so well known for. And I think that's a big reason why TikTok is just exploding right now, because there really isn't that perfect sort of filter on TikTok. It's really raw and real. So I think certainly when brands are looking to first start off and align with partners, they should be thinking of video as a really significant part of their program for sure.
And the last question I like to ask everyone who comes on the show is if you have a resource that you can share. So a book that's helped you, a podcast you listen to, someone you follow online, anything like that, that people might be able to dive into to get a little bit more insight into all of the things that you know.
That's a great question. To be honest, I've made so many referrals to him that he probably has like a wait list for years, but I've been working with a business coach. His name is Ben Easter and his company is Lucid Shift Coaching. And I've been working with him for over a year. And I think for all entrepreneurs that have the resources to invest in a business coach, it's the absolute best resource and decision I've ever made. And I think it's really just a matter of being self-aware, knowing your weaknesses as a founder, knowing where you need to ask for help and where your crutches are, and working with him, I've really been able to, establish clear boundaries to protect work-life balance. I've been able to understand, what opportunities serve me versus others that I was accepting out of fear as a business owner. All of these different components that are really tricky when you're just running it by yourself and trying to figure it out. So I think my recommendation would be to work with a coach in some capacity, just to kind of act as a mirror to show you what you can learn and how you can grow.
That's a great tip. That's the first recommendation for a coach that we've had on the show.
Yeah?
So I think, yeah.
Love it.
Well, Julianne Fraser, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was great to chat with you and appreciate all of your amazing expert insights into influencer marketing.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Hey everyone, it's Jasmine again. Hope you enjoyed that interview. Lots of good stuff in there that you can kind of implement in your business now. And if you did, please don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. Helps us get great guests on the show like Julianne, and also helps other people find the program. See you next time.